Hey everybody, Lisa Romano here, the Breakthrough Life Coach, and today I want to address something that I think a lot of us go through, but I haven't had or heard um, anyone talk about it. It has recently surfaced in my 12-week Breakthrough Coaching program, and very oftentimes when one person is struggling with something, it turns out that many of us are. I wanted to talk about how when we begin to awaken to what has happened to us in our history. And for the first time, we begin exploring the idea that we have been, in fact, wounded and abused and forsaken and all that wonderful stuff. When we first start acknowledging that to be true, why it is that sometimes, rather than feeling like liberated or excited about discovering the truth, why it is that very oftentimes we feel depressed, why it is oftentimes that on the healing path, when we think that we figured it out, why do we sometimes just want to retreat into ourselves? Why do we feel like we want to be alone? Why do we feel like we don't want to talk to anybody? Why do we feel like we can't go out and be around crowds? Why is it happening? So when I began to awaken and I began to acknowledge that there was a lot of dysfunction, not only in my family, obviously, but within myself and my marriage. And also, I realized how I had affected my own children. While I was unaware. When I began to awaken to all of this stuff, I wasn't doing cartwheels. There was a part of me that was like, yes, I finally figured it out. It's not me. I'm codependent. And like, there has to be a way out of this. That was great. But the other side of it felt like I was being let down. Like, oh God, what does this mean? And there was a period of time where I felt like I needed to just retreat. I felt like I needed to just, like I said earlier, cocoon myself. And I couldn't put my finger on it then. All I knew at the time was that I had been conditioned to ignore how I felt. And I knew that people who came from healthy homes didn't have that experience. People who came from healthy homes felt seen. And I felt invisible. And I felt unworthy. And I felt not good enough. And thus codependent. And like I was always waiting for somebody on the outside to tell me that I was good enough. That was my experience well into my 30s. And so I knew I had to accept how I felt, which was rather depressed and rather full of like, just anxiety over being with other people. I felt a very strong desire to be by myself. And at the time, like I said, I didn't understand exactly what was going through, but I was accepting it. Over the years, I think I've figured out what that might have been about. I think what happens to us is that when we go for so long feeling invisible, and when we go for so long feeling like the wounds that we feel on a somatic level are there, but we don't know how to acknowledge them, there is some level of protection or denial about what's really happened to us. And because sometimes, very oftentimes, when you come from a dysfunctional home, nobody's telling the truth. You could be sexually abused. You could tell your mother and your father that so-and-so sexually abused you. And they're like, maybe he made a mistake. Or maybe she didn't mean to do that. Or maybe it was a dream. Or whatever. And so you have this experience, and yet, you could have people in your reality who don't know what to do with that information, or they have been sexually abused, or they are abusers, let's say, and they don't know how to face the truth, and they don't know or they don't want to face this truth, right? And so here you are, you have this incredible injury, and your body has stored the visceral memory and the somatic experience and the physiological responses to this experience, fear, terror, and all of that. But your whole life you've been told it didn't happen. So it's sort of like you haven't been permitted to experience this experience. It's the unexperienced experience. And then you happen upon the healing path, and you're doing recovery work, and you're working with a trauma specialist, or you're doing a meditation, or you're working with a life coach, or taking a program like my own, and you're learning to acknowledge your experiences and to feel them, right? And to process them, right? And not judge them. And all of a sudden, you're starting to feel like pulled down from this experience, and you don't want to talk to people. And, you don't have much energy for cooking, and you love your kids, but you don't have much energy to, like, how was your day and everything. That's gone. You're just kind of like flat, like, I'm sad. This is the way I feel, and I can't pretend this is how I feel. That's very normal, and it's valid. It's sort of like when, I just said this in one of my Facebook groups. It's sort of like, you know, you've gone your whole life with all of these bruises and all of these scars just below the surface, and not even you can see them, because your outer world, the mirror that you're looking into the eyes of these people that you love, and no one is mirroring back to you, oh my God, I can't believe that you've been so wounded. This is so terrible. In fact, everybody is denying it. When this happens, when there is an invalidation, when you are looking into the eyes of the soul, the eyes of other people, which are the windows to the soul, and you're looking into these people's eyes, and this idea, like, this didn't happen, you weren't abused, I don't know what you're talking about, you're just a drama queen, you just made that up, you're dreaming, blah, 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 blah. When that is what you see, what happens, I feel, is there's an invalidation, a serious invalidation of your experience. And whether we recognize it or not, we are being conditioned to invalidate our own experience. So without this other, I think the other is very important. And I think that witnessing is extremely important. And we are supposed to be validated and feel seen by people from the outside. I believe that helps turn on the mirror neurons to in our brains, to the self. How do I know I have a self? I know I have a self because you recognize the self in me, right? So I have a mother who recognized that I have a self. How does she do that? By acknowledging I have feelings, by acknowledging the expressions on my face, by paying attention to my homework, by showing up for PTA meetings, by representing herself as somebody who's got my back. That is how I develop an I matter. But without that experience, being a child who's grown up in an environment where I'm not being attuned to, I am floundering as an identity. I cannot grab onto or find the space to create my I don't have it. And so when that is your experience, and there has been trauma, and there has been abuse, and there is no healthy mirror, there is no one saying, that should have never happened. Your father should have never touched you that way. Your stepfather should have never done that to you. Your mother should have never ignored that. Your brother should have never said that. Your sister should have never done that. Your grandfather, your grandmother, whoever these people are, these adults that abuse their power over you, this should have never happened. If you don't have that experience, a teacher, a coach, somebody from the church, somebody to say to you, you're not crazy, this should have never happened, then what happens is there's a denial of your own experience. And it can make you, even though it makes you feel like wobbly, like you think this happened, you have this internal reality, but everybody keeps telling me it didn't happen. There's a sense of, for lack of a better word, a sense of protection in there. Like, because we're not really acknowledging the trauma, right? And then we happen upon, we're on the enlightenment path, which is bittersweet, and we're doing recovery work, and we begin to acknowledge what has happened to us. And suddenly we feel this low, like, what is happening to me? I think what we're experiencing is the experiences we weren't allowed to experience, but we're also grieving. For the first time in our life, psychologically and cognitively, right, we're acknowledging we've been wounded. We're acknowledging, like, this actually happened. we are in a very sacred, beautiful place that in my opinion, is very important when it comes to integration. Before I can integrate, I have to acknowledge my I, who I am. And before I can integrate, I have to acknowledge what's happened to me, right? I don't have to get stuck there, but I have to acknowledge my experiences. I have to learn what it feels like to be me. I have to understand what has happened to me. I have to learn how not to fear what has been downloaded into me, right? That is all necessary when it comes to integration. When you have spent your whole life detached from your experiences, right? Not your fault. No one acknowledged them. And then you're suddenly acknowledging your experiences, you are suddenly going to feel a drop. And you may wish to cocoon yourself. And I think what's happening is grief, an acknowledgement of loss, and integration, right? There's a lot happening. So it's almost like one part of the mind that was kind of like, maybe this didn't happen, or I think I feel this, but maybe I'm not so sure. All of a sudden, that begins to dissolve, and there's like this integration of, wow, that really did happen. Like, oh my God, that really happened. I really was that abused. Like, that really happened, and we end up feeling very raw. And in those moments, sometimes I've had clients say to me, I idealized my mother my whole life. I idealized my father my whole life, because my mother was the more verbal one and she was more verbally abusive. I idealized my father, but now I'm realizing my father was an alcoholic and he spent his money gambling. And that's a lot of the reason why my mother was so angry and she felt stuck and, whatever, all of a sudden when this stuff starts to happen, and you're starting to see family dynamics more clearly and not through the lens of a frightened inner child who is trying to cling to one parent, because the idea that both parents are, messed up is too frightening, right? So the need to idealize at least one parent is very, very common. And when you start recognizing what's really happened to you on your path, and what happened to you when you were a little child, there's a lot going on. We're not doing cartwheels. Yay, I figured it out. My dad was an alcoholic and a gambler and he was cheating on my mom, but I didn't really know that when I was 6. All I knew was that my dad was happy all the time. I didn't know he was drunk. I didn't know he just got laid. I didn't know that. I didn't know that my mom was making food for my father and she was pissed off and she's screaming and throwing things because he was cheating on her and there was no more money and he said he was going to come home and he didn't come home. All I saw was this angry woman. So as a 6-year-old, I think mommy's the problem. You don't do cartwheels when that starts hitting you. What happens is it's like rapid fire. Sometimes it's like these layers are just coming off and coming off and coming off. And it's like, all of these years of brain fog that you've lived in, trying to figure out how you felt, all of a sudden the pieces of the puzzle start to fall into place. And I'm telling you, it's very common for you to want to isolate. Suddenly you look in the mirror and your vision has changed. Suddenly you one day you had no bruises when you looked in the mirror, and the next day you're like, I'm full of scars and I'm full of wounds. And I remember when this happened. I remember when that happened, and all this shit really, really happened. I'm not crazy. That can make you feel like you need to surround yourself in your own love. It could make you feel like you need to pull back. It can make you feel like there aren't many people who can understand what you're going through. And you know what? That might be valid. There might not be a whole bunch of people in your experience that are going to be able to witness for you. But then again, you might be lucky enough to have one person that could say, you know what, Sue? Like, I can understand what you're going through. That's terrible. I understand exactly why you need to pull back right now. That we recognize, what we're going through. So what we're trying to accomplish as human beings is basically integration. which is we're trying to integrate the past with what we're experiencing in the now. We're trying to understand our now. Why do I do what I do, say what I do, and behave the way I do, and feel the way I do? Why do I vibrate and resonate with this? I don't want this, but why does this, meaning my 3D reality, why does that keep showing up? If you don't like what's showing up in the 3D reality, then you need to stop and ask yourself why you think what's showing up is showing up. And I can tell you that what's showing up is a mirror to what you've experienced in the past. Now, that's not bad news, because we can, as creators incarnate, we can actually change what's happening in the matrix. We can actually change what's happening outside of ourselves in the 3D world, but not until we learn how to master what's happening to us in the mind, in the metaphysical world. Not until we can change the messages and that we are streaming to the pineal gland, and we can change what we're resonating with. And once we change our resonance, then we resonate with different things. That's when our outer world will begin to show evidence to us that we've actually changed. Because what's showing up, if I'm having resistance in the outer world, that means there's resistance inside of me. And most often the times, the resistance is related to some type of cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance represents, it's a nice fancy word for to explain psychological dissonance, where I'm holding two conflicting beliefs about one thing at the same time. So I want to love myself, but I don't think that I'm worthy. I want to attract abundance, but I'm not sure that I have the ability to create abundance, right? I want to be happy, but I'm not sure that, anybody's really happy. I want to be free of this relationship, but I'm really afraid of what the neighbors are going to think. I want to try a different career path, but you know what? I went to school for 6 years and I have a degree, and I'm not so sure I'll be able to make money doing this other thing. That's cognitive dissonance. And so what'll happen is, let's say, I want to change a career paths. If I have cognitive dissonance over doing so, then my current life experience will be problematic, and there'll be lots of resistance. That's because I'm not lined up with what I really, really want. That's because I have reality A over here, reality B over here. I want reality B, but I don't know. I'm not in alignment with reality B, right? So all the messages in my mind are, I can't do that. I can't do that. This is why I can't do that. And so I am not in alignment with what I really, really want. There is resistance to what I really want. There is resistance to my believing that I can create what I really, really want. And so in the real world, in the 3D world, I will experience resistance on many, many different levels until I finally go non-resistant to what I feel and what I want, and I begin to act in the 3D world upon that which I desire. If you want to experience abundance, then you must believe that you're worthy, and you have to act on that. That is like creating a clear channel to the universe. Like, hey, this is what I want, and this is me proving that I am worthy of this. And in a short amount of time, you shall attract what you desire, as long as you stay in alignment and non-resistance to what you really want. While you're on the healing path, it's really important to recognize this idea of going non-resistant to how you feel and embracing the path as you go. So while you're on the healing path, just remember that, when you discover something, I call it a pocket of pain. When you discover the truth, and it could be that you really were abused, right? And all these years your family told you that you were crazy or whatever. And you really come to the realization that this was messed up. Like, I was really abused. Accept how you feel. So if you need to watch Netflix all weekend, if you need to make yourself some chicken soup, if you need to, tell your friends you need a break, listen to yourself. Be non-resistant to what is. Embrace what is. Love yourself. Love your inner child. Waking up, in the morning and looking in the mirror and seeing the black eyes and seeing the scars in your body, that's difficult. Facing our truth is difficult. And there is a sense of loss there. And there is a sense of grief, that is mixed with relief when we realize that we have been abused. It's never a fun process to recognize that you have experienced something traumatic in the past that you may have once denied. It's never a fun process, but it is part of the process. We've come full circle. We've come to acknowledge what's happened, how we are in the now, acknowledge how our past has created this now experience, so that we can become non-resistant to how we feel and what is and the past, so that we can successfully manifest what we desire truly and what our soul is in alignment with in the future. And so for us to come, full circle and become energetic beings that are in alignment with our soul's desire, then the healing path is all part of that process. I am not one that believes that you can just forget the past. I think that you actually, it's activated inside of you, and until it's released and almost neutralized through the healing process, then it's still activated inside of you. And there's always just so far you'll be able to go. And even if you achieve certain successes on some level, this resonance, this part of you that you've not been able to heal is still activated. So I think our goal is to wish to, as much as possible, heal whatever activated energies we have within our being that may be holding us down and having us resonate with the frequency with something that we don't want to attract. It could be attracting narcissistic people into our lives, or, we resonate with dysfunction, or we resonate with resistance. The goal is to really neutralize those vibrations within our being, so that we can come into full integration and learn what it is to keep our bodies calm, and then to create visions in our head that match our future desired reality. And then, it's all about mastery, right? So then once I get to that level, then my job is to be able to stay in a state of anticipation of, or even receptivity, almost absolutely living as if what I want, I've already experienced. So it's not, I'll be happy when I get the job, or I'll be happy when I find love, or I'll be happy when when my cancer is in remission, or I'll be happy when my son does this, I'll be happy when I do that, or when I get that. No, you have to be happy now. You have to imagine that what you wish to experience has already manifested, because what we think about and what we're resonating with, we're actually bringing about, good, bad, beautiful, or ugly. And it's not that the universe is doing anything wrong. The universe is lining us up 2 by 2. So vibration with vibration, reality, internal reality with external reality, as it is below, so shall it be above. We're trying to learn how to master all of that. And the healing path, and recognizing what's happened in the path, so that we can process it, release it, and neutralize the energy related to it in our bodies, is essential if we want to become clear paths and strongly magnetized for love, abundance, contentment, and peace, which is every soul's birthright. Thank you so much for being here. If you don't know about some of the things that I offer, I have a 12-week class, I have an 8-week master class, which is law of attraction class. I also have a monthly membership site that you can participate in. I just love creating products that allow people to find their light, and help them shine it brightly. Thank you so much for being here, dear ones. Namaste, as I bow to the love and the light that is absolutely in you. Bye for now.